Okay, thank you, Joyce, and thanks to the organizing committee for the invitation to deliver this plenary today. You can find the QR code where you can find most of the references that I'll be using during these talks. So if there is something that is of interest to you, simply you can capture the reference from this QR code. Okay, AI. Okay, AI is transforming the manipulation of symbolic systems. By symbolic systems, I do not only mean language, I mean numbers. I mean code. I mean images. I mean video. So I mean every system we humans use to think and to talk about what we think and what we do. Rather than replacing traditional teaching, AI is increasingly part of a hybrid, co-constructed space where human and artificial intelligences interact to support learning. As Pierre Lévy has put it recently, AI represents a new phase in the evolution and the manipulation of symbolic systems within digital culture. So we can think that at its best, AI can promote learning, but at its worst, of course, AI could completely automate the processes that define academic work. So what happens when we let AI, not educators, drive the intellectual labor of designing learning? For McKeans, he has an answer to this question, and the answer is that we get a university that moves faster but thinks less. So probably we all here agree that this is not the ideal scenario, so we want to resist this movement in a significant way, I suppose. So I situate language learning in a constellation of ecologies that define language learning in the second quarter of the 21st century, 2025 basically. So this talk explores the convergence of corpus linguistics and AI as complementary paradigms that can offer a powerful framework for reimagining data-driven learning in second language education. I will draw on recent research in this area and practical models of AI and corpus literacy. I argue for an approach that foregrounds human agency, critical thinking, and metacognitive skill development. Corpus linguistics, I think we will all agree, anchors pedagogy, language or language learning pedagogy in empirical attested language use. AI, on the contrary, affords immediacy. Together, they may support the design of pedagogies that are ethically grounded and responsive to 21st century learning goals. The talk presents areas of convergence, such as critical engagement, and showcases examples of how AI can be integrated into language learning ecologies. I suppose I call for a shift from binary thinking, where we think of corpus linguistics and AI as two areas or two paradigms that do not talk to each other, but I call for this shift towards a hybrid pedagogical vision where corpus linguistics and AI work in tandem to empower both language teachers and language learners. Okay, so here we go. It may seem a paradox, but the last 5 years witnessed not only the emergence of large language models, in other words, ChatGPT in November 2022. What were you doing in November 2022? Right, that's the question. So, I mean, in other words, AI for the masses, right? But also, and I want to be very positive here, a boost in the study of the impact of corpus linguistics on language education. There has never been so much research and knowledge production in the world as in the last decade. And there has never been so much research and publications on data-driven learning and corpora in language education. The UNESCO Science Report 2021 shows that scientific output grew worldwide by, I think it's 21% between 2015 and 2019, but applied linguistics and computer-assisted language learning are no exceptions. So we could see that in this area there was also an emergence of quality research in areas such as vocabulary acquisition, the use of technology for language learning, and the use of, for example, R for statistical analysis, and tracking methodologies and technologies like eye tracking, for example, which shows a shift towards more sophisticated research methodologies. This is according to a paper published by Liu and Hu 2024, which is a scientific review of applied linguistics looking at 8,000 papers between 2017 and 2021. So my impression is that this is where corpus linguistics and data-driven learning come in, just making use of more sophisticated research methodologies and insights into language education. Thinking about one of the most influential papers in this area that we could date back to, sorry to say this, the last century. I know it sounds strong, but this is a 1997 paper, right? So Tony is here. So this is Teaching and Language Corpora. This will sound familiar to most of us here. So again, this was published in RICO in 1997. By the way, you can find all of these wonderful papers online for free, right? So you can find them and you can get to read them even if they were published just before, you know, this digital age. So in this paper, Tony and McInerney and Andrew Wilson, Tony McInerney, Andrew Wilson, talk about groundbreaking work in large corpus browsing, and they talk about SARA, and they talk about SGML. If you know SARA, probably like me, you will have an appointment with your doctor in the next month or so, just to make sure that you are fine. Just nothing major, just a blood test and everything. And they said, work remains to be done to ease the path of corpus exploitation, but all the signs are that this particular problem is clearing itself up fast and in the right way. So believe it or not, just we've gone such a long way in terms of usability of the tools and the possibilities that these tools offer. And Lauren's talk yesterday is a great example of those breakthroughs, I suppose. John Gillespie in 2020 surveyed the field of computer-assisted language learning by looking at the production in 3 important journals in computer-assisted language learning during this is 2006-2016 period. He found that corpus linguistics is theme number 13 in computer-assisted language learning and accounts for above 5% of all research in computer-assisted language learning. He found that, this is his words, corpus linguistics has had a strong and sustained presence in computer-assisted language learning research, especially in vocabulary acquisition, grammar, and writing. So this is the words from somebody who has been an expert in the field, like for 3 decades at least, in the Eurocall community and computer-assisted language learning research community. Now, journals such as Taylor and Francis, Computer-Assisted Language Learning, publish 8 issues a year instead of 4. RICO continues to publish 3 issues a year, but now this is open access, which means that, again, there is more presence of technology in language education, and corpora and corpus linguistics take center stage in this process. By the way, these 2 journals are in the top 4 of the 2024 JCR in linguistics, just published in last June. So we are moving from a situation where just a few years ago, data-driven learning or corpus linguistics was nowhere to be found in main areas of linguistics. Like, check out these handbooks. I'm thinking about this one by Wiley, this Handbook of Technology and Second Language Teaching and Learning. Where is DDL? Nowhere. Where is Corpus Linguistics? Nowhere. And this is 2017, so this is not like, oh yeah, well in the 20th century, no, this is just 8 years ago. Now we are moving to a situation where just handbooks published in 2024 and 2025 both feature chapters either devoted to data-driven learning or to the use of corpus linguistics methods for language learning or language teaching. So I think we should congratulate that we as a field, we are gaining presence not only within our own fora like this one, but just outside, you know, in the outer, you know, applied linguistics kind of battlefield, so to speak, in a way. So I think this is good news. And what about the Palgrave Encyclopedia of Computer-Assisted Language Learning? Last time I checked, they featured 40 entries. I think now it's over 50 entries devoted to data-driven learning. I will say this again. 50 entries devoted to data-driven learning. Can we count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 50, all right? Data-driven learning, and which I think is absolutely fantastic. So this is edited by McCallum and Tafasoli, but the data-driven learning bit is edited by Alex Bolton and Nina Vyatkina. So they are doing a fantastic job there. So yeah, more people know about corpus linguistics, more people know about data-driven learning in 2025. So the evolution of corpus linguistics and data-driven learning, I think, has already reshaped language education. However, this recent scholarship calls for a strategic reimagining of data-driven learning to realize its potential, its broader potential, I guess. So traditionally centered on concordancers and static corpus interfaces, data-driven learning has probably often remained confined to specialist settings, and which I think has limited its pedagogical scope. There is consensus in the field that we must shift from a narrow focus on tools, sorry, Lawrence, to a more inclusive data-driven learning mindset, one that can empower both language teachers and learners to engage with language data in autonomous ways, I suppose. So corpus linguistics has laid the empirical and methodological groundwork, but data-driven learning must now extend this reach across languages, across learner profiles, and professional domains. So this entails developing more intuitive tools and pedagogical frameworks that support digital and computational literacies as part of language learning, and not just as extras, but part of the design of language learning itself. So in doing so, data-driven learning can reposition learners as active agents in their own linguistic development rather than passive, recipients of, I suppose, input in a way. A broadened data-driven learning approach prioritizes learner agency and fosters meta-linguistic awareness and deeper cognitive engagement with language. And I think that this perspective invites a more ecologically valid research, one that examines how learners in situated contexts actually interact with data, and how teachers also might integrate these DVL practices without or with specialist training, depending on their needs and depending on their resources. So corpus linguistics and data-driven learning shouldn't, I think, be seen as ends in themselves, but as means for facilitating meaningful situated language learning that aligns with communicative needs in 2025 and digital realities, and language learning ecologies both inside language classroom but also outside language classrooms. So a language learning ecology is a complex dynamic system in which language learning takes place. A language learning ecology tries to understand the relationship between learners, of course, teachers, the tools, the environments, and the socio-cultural context. There is consensus in research that these ecologies, as I speak, 2025, are multimodal, so they involve, of course, text, but also audio, video, avatars, interactive media. They are distributed, they span the language classroom, but go beyond into social media, into AI platforms, into software, into mobile apps. These ecologies are responsive. We see that they try to adapt to language learners' needs through personalization, and they are collaborative. They are shaped by human interaction, but increasingly they are shaped by human AI or system interactions. So language learning ecologies view language learning not as linear or an isolated process, but as a process which is embodied in a wide range of interacting factors. Richard Kern, an expert in this area, has framed, for example, language education within an ecology of digital literacies, where meaning is constructed relationally and learners' agency, identities, and participation in virtual communities are central. I have seen very little, if none, research in this area in data-driven learning. Like, we couldn't belong there. I suppose for some reason, we remain, just outside this understanding of how language learning is taking place, not only in university classrooms, but out there. Handley has highlighted, as you can see, most of these references are 2024 or even 2025. Handley has highlighted how AI tools like Grammarly or ChatGPT or Duolingo participate in educational ecosystems, but they have limitations in replicating human-centered, effective kind of contextual knowledge that teachers still likely possess. And John Flowerdew, 2024, has emphasized how learners interact now with tools such as ChatGPT as part of what he calls an evolving pedagogical and technological ecology. So what is the role of corpus linguistics in this network of language learning ecologies? And is there a role for corpora in AI-driven language learning? Lawrence started to answer this question yesterday, so I will follow, right? I'm taking the liberty here to frame corpus linguistics and AI as paradigms of language manipulation, as they hold a set of different beliefs about, for example, language data and users' agency, but of course the use of the term paradigm here is obviously free. So corpus linguistics, I think that everyone in this room will agree that offers many pedagogical advantages. Some of these strengths are its empirical foundation, which allows the learner to engage with authentic language data. Also, they have the capacity, and this is found in the literature in a consistent way, promote learner autonomy by encouraging exploration and hypothesis testing. So this has been one of those areas that has been widely researched. And we know that corpus-based approaches support the development of pattern recognition skills and contribute to learners' data literacy. So pattern recognition, data literacy. So I think we've been talking about this in other talks as well, and this is part of the conversation in data-driven learning, or has been part of the conversation for at least 25 years, I suppose. However, there are challenges that are still, hindering this broad adoption in educational contexts. They include the need for more comprehensive teacher training, and this is found in the literature, widely limited uptake among practitioners, in other words, teachers, language teachers, and usability issues associated with existing corpus tools, which can present barriers to effective integration in classrooms and outside classrooms. I don't know if you know this paper. This is a recent paper by Dominic Stewart. Probably you know Dominic Stewart. So this is an interesting paper where the author walks in the shoes of a hypothetical learner that makes use of a sketch engine to learn to learn English in this case. This is hypothetical. This is not a research design that affords empirical, data. So he is, in a way, trying to understand how a hypothetical learner may go about using a sketch engine for language learning. It's, I think it's a fun paper to read. It's painful also, and as well, you can read some of the conclusions there. But yeah, but also this brings back memories of research that I did with part of my research team back in the day when we actually used computer tracking to find what students are doing whenever they are using corpora, right? Some of the authors are here. Jose Maria is here. Jose Maria, hi, is now professor of computer science in Aston University. So I'm so happy that he is here today as well. So he was part of this project. So in very just straightforward words, what we found is that learners found even searching corpus data extremely complex. So starting with step number one, searching was a major obstacle for just trying to make the most of corpus data and corpus data interpretation, together with other many problems here. And also this is echoed in the chapter that Jael, Mark, and myself co-wrote with Tony McInnery and Mike McCarthy on 25 years of teaching a language corpora. And Mike here is thinking about how we corpus linguists, we find it so easy to find patterns, but how difficult this is for language learners that have not been trained to actually find and discover patterns. Also, he talks about context here, and I think it's a very relevant quote. So we know that these problems have been around for as long as I can remember, but we keep talking about them. I suppose we try to make sense of these problems. Now, AI. So I'm not talking about what large language models are. We had Lawrence talk yesterday, so I think we know now what large language models are, all right? But it is interesting that they have attracted so much attention in applied linguistics. In the last 2 years, you won't believe, I'm sure that you will believe it anyway, how much is found these days in the inbox of an editor in a journal on this area. So there is lots of attention paid to large language models in language education. So these models offer high levels of accessibility, especially if, as Lawrence mentioned yesterday, if they are kind of commercial online. If you use these in your laptop, well, if your laptop is powerful enough, probably you'll be happy with the response that you get. Maybe not. Maybe this is out of bounds for most users that will find it, I don't know, just not easy to set up your own large language model in your computer or in your server, right? If you happen to have one. So basically, the responsiveness of large language models and AI for adaptive interactions imply that they can mimic conversational practice and conversation. This is why they were trained to do this, and they do it in a way that gives you the impression that you are having a conversation. Yesterday, we really understood what's going on behind, and well, after that, the illusion is open to everyone's eye, right? If we still believe that we are having a conversation, well, I suppose it's like when you go to the theater, right? So if you want to believe that the action that is happening on stage is real, and you do believe that the action is happening is real, at least in that context, maybe this is something that it is conventional and you agree to believe so. But anyway, so these capacities really mimic conversation, but they lack cognition and they lack embodiment, all right? Mitsumoto research in 2023, a couple of very interesting papers on using AI and corpora to scaffold learner tasks. It's a very promising area of research. I pretty much recommend reading his research there. Okay, so the use of these large language models is, of course, not without complications, and concerns have been raised regarding the opaque decision-making processes, the generation of misleading output, or, and this is, for me, this is the most worrying one, the potential for over-reliance in terms of language learners, which in the end may lead to reduced learner autonomy if they tend to over-rely on using AI to solve some of the tasks or to learn languages. So the persistent availability of these models, according to research or to the research that we have managed to put together so far, says that these models may contribute to the democratization of language learning by reducing financial and logistical barriers. And this is something that we, living in the first world, we tend to forget. So for some people, just having the chance to check out on ChatGPT or whatever, Gemini 2.5, whatever, just how to say something in Chinese or get Gemini 2.5 to teach basic Chinese is a very, very useful resource. So there are situations where these large language models are really helping people that probably don't have the resources that we may probably have in other countries or in other areas of the world where we have more access to information and culture and education, I suppose. So in contrast to static resources, AI again facilitates this dynamic adaptive interaction. Okay. So convergence. So I'm going to bring back Tony again here. I recommend everyone to read Tony's paper on 20 years of corpora, right? Okay. So clearly we have this opportunity to explore whether some of these tools can be useful for corpus linguists doing language research or for corpus linguists doing language education. So there is this opportunity to really test the water here, all right? So the convergence of AI and corpus linguistics in language education, I think, seeks a balanced and pedagogically sound model that influences the accessibility and responsiveness of AI, but at the same time maintaining and nurturing learners' analytical and metacognitive competencies through corpus literacy. So an integrative framework aligns with emerging calls for ethically grounded discipline-specific AI literacy education, which I think encourages learners to use AI tools critically, right? The main challenge, of course, remains in the design of curricula that can be useful. So while corpus linguistics emphasizes methodological transparency and learner agency, large language models prioritize ease of access. So having the best of both worlds can be fantastic, as Hannah Montana proved, right? Sorry about that. So I think that these paradigms need not to be seen as oppositional. Here, of course, thinking about corpus software developers such as Lawrence Anthony himself or Mark Davies and others that have begun to integrate AI into corpus linguistics inspired or based pedagogy, right? Again, the challenge is in balancing the pedagogical rigor of corpus approaches with the flexibility and the immediacy that we find in AI-driven technologies. So I suggest two broad converging scenarios. In the first, AI expands data-driven learning, and in the second, corpus literacy informs and complements AI-driven language learning. Let me talk about those. We know that traditional data-driven learning, as learners manipulate concordances or concordance lines, through tools such as Encon or Sketch Engine to what? To discover patterns in corpora. These are tools that are powerful, but they, as we have seen, demand very steep learning curves. In the meta-analysis by Alex Bolton and Tom Cobb, 2017, they talk extensively about these learning curves. But AI can serve as a proxy for corpus interfaces, accepting natural language queries, right? So now we could ask an AI, show me how, for example, show me how despite is used in academic articles or in these academic articles that I find of interest in my own learning or in my own research. So we are beginning to see how tools are beginning to use AI. So EnglishCorpora.org is, I think, deploying this month these new AI capabilities, right? So I also like how transparent Mark Davies was about this whole process of thinking about it. So he's very open about it, right? And this is something that he wrote on his website. So I thought maybe it's not a question of either or, maybe it's an issue of and with. So there's a whole bunch of resources on his website. So very soon we will find the very old, this is collocates for cap, when cap is a noun, baseball cap, salary cap. We are more familiar with salary caps, I think. Baseball caps, maybe. Well, anyway, trade caps and so on. But then you can see on the top hand, so top right corner there, you can see categorize. So now we can see that these collocates will be categorized into I suppose, just topics, right? So for example, clothing, finance, and extreme environment. So this reads these collocates and groups these collocates according to these different categories, which may facilitate the understanding of the contexts where this is happening. Of course, if you want to stay with old school English corpora, this is old school English corpora, so nothing is forcing you to make use of the categorize AI option there, okay? It's just another tool, another option that is at your disposal. You can also do the same with phrases, like for example, soft plus noun. There you find soft plus noun, just categorize into physical texture and sound and voice quality, and then you find their frequency across the racers and across the time windows that COCA is using. And you can increase the level of complexity, and you can find some aid in terms of how this is painted on screen with beautiful navy blue, just splendor there, showing you how to interpret these frequencies across, in this case, across the time window that is offered there. Or you can build your own concordance tool. This is one I didn't write this one. Gemini 2.5 wrote this one, but it wrote the concordancer I need with some of my students. So it's something that I am using with my students, using the features I want in terms of my own language students, my own texts, and my own group of students. Okay, so this is Gemini 2.5. By the way, I forgot to ask, this is funny, to tag the texts in English, and Gemini thought I wanted part of speech tagging in Spanish, as I was using Spanish to input my instructions. So I thought, oh yeah, come on, you need to do better. But anyway, it's fantastic too, really. So part of this also scenario is efforts by, for example, Chen and Crosswade, where they are blending just the use of corpora and RAG-powered chatbots, in other words, ChatGPT, over genuine corpora, all right? So the authors integrate AI by using this type of augmented retrieval of information, RAG, augmented ChatGPT, over discipline-tailored, discipline-specific corpora. So they couple this sketch engine core functionalities, so you still get frequency, quick concordance, collocations, but you can get to, or students can get to use this natural language to query these corpus. And the context here is one of academic writing in university education. All right. Okay, a second scenario is more challenging, is a scenario where students are using AI for language learning. And this is wild in so many ways, I suppose. But I think that Corpus Linguistics has long supported data literacy by helping learners analyze patterns. So we know how to do that, or at least we have some insight into that process, and make informed hypotheses and evaluate linguistic evidence. So talking about corpus literacy, we are not new to this concept. This has received lots of attention. I'm thinking of about O'Sullivan's paper, 2007. Kinma has an entry in the Paragraph Encyclopedia of Corpus Linguistics on corpus literacy, which is super informative, very up-to-date. Robert Poole's work is fantastic. I myself, I don't use the term corpus literacy, I just use the term corpus skills. So I put together these 18 corpus skills. Why 18? I have no idea. Probably that's maybe the second version of this book will be 15 or 24. Those I thought were interesting, and people interacted with them and said that they felt that they made sense in their context. So a recent AI literacy model in the context of a project funded by the Spanish Research Agency proposes this kind of integrated approach that combines corpus, digital, and metacognitive literacies. This is a joint effort of 5 universities in Spain, 1 university in the UK, and a fantastic team of experts in many areas of ESP, computational linguistics, across the board, including, you know, there's 5 different universities in Spain. So in a recent study with undergrads from my own university, 41 undergrads, we decided first to approach how they go about using both, in this case, corpora, sketch engine, and AI for language learning. So we got the instructors, and we asked these instructors what they needed in terms of vocabulary and grammar points that they felt could benefit from a corpus linguistics or corpus-based pedagogy. So we chose vocabulary and we chose some grammar points. Among the vocabulary they chose, you can find mainly adjectives. This is C1, so this is second-year students, around 19-year-old students. Basically, people spending around 7 hours a day on their mobile phones and checking, you know, their social media on a very regular, not all of them, of course, but the average number of hours in this group is really around 7 hours a day. So we decided to keep 5 of these words for in-depth analysis, and believe me, it was very time-consuming analysis. So we looked at chauvinistic, haughty, scowl, shrewd, and well-matched. So 5 adjectives and 1 verb. The language instructors said that these adjectives and this verb represents kind of adjectives, words that sometimes are too easy to learn for them or too difficult. So we wanted to have a blend of both in the analysis. So the study, as I said, involved 41 undergraduate students. The students completed surveys and participated in instructor workshops using Sketch Engine and AI. They feature grammar, vocabulary tasks aligned with their curriculum. Quantitative data came from pre- and post-workshop surveys and activity evaluation, while qualitative insights were gathered through reflective questions and a follow-up focus group with only 6 of these 41 students. The analysis including descriptive statistics, qualitative coding, and so on. So just to get a long story short, let me tell you that from the Corpus Linguistics kind of engagement, they never used Corpus Linguistics before. So they came to the workshop on sketch engine like, with an open mind in terms of a fresh mind. They'd never used Corpora before, although the use of Corpora in my department is very intensive, but in year 3 and year 4, not in year 2. So for them, it was the first time that they actually came, close to a corpus. So what we found is that mainly just their answers, so we analyzed their answers to some of the tasks after using a sketch engine. They could be grouped into 3 categories. In the first, the responses included reference to language that it is evident in the corpus data, although it is always different. For example, for chauvinistic, some of the students chose, well, I believe that this word tends to appear with nationalism, or in the context of nationalism, xenophobic and sexist. And another student said, well, nationalism, arrogant and misogynist, all right? So all of these answers were afforded by the corpus data, but they decided to focus on different words. They seem to select cognate words in their L1, in this case Spanish, in a consistent way. So their choice is filtered by their knowledge of their L1, and those that have a very similar collocational profile with Spanish collocations as well. In the second category, we find answers that seem correct, but cannot be found on a sketch engine. So our hypothesis is that one of these was also corroborated in the focus group, is that they used sketch engine. ChatGPT, or I don't know, Gemini, or Google to find the answer. So they didn't use, even when they were sort of trying to interact with sketch engine, they didn't use these for their answer. So they found the answer somewhere else. So the data they offered was not afforded by the evidence there. And then we have a third category of uncritical selections, and these happened with SCOLE. With SCOLE, the range of collocations is very limited. They were instructed to use, this is N1010 2021, and we looked at English blogs. So that was the main focus there. So most of them said that SCOLE is used with Zelda and Fayette, which, well, obviously these proper nouns in the word sketch are incidental. What is not incidental is that SCOLE tends to appear in narrative contexts, something that was not suggested in any of the replies. So this, in a way, shows that they had problems identifying that some of these collocates are simply proper nouns, all right? And they will not be useful in any way for language teaching or for language learning. So in a way, we thought that they were not really engaging with the language evidence there. With analysis of the AI-driven activities, we did something different. We focused on grammar, and students had to go through just a survey that they had to fill in. So you can see there, this is the typical fill in the blanks. There is a verb there, so they need to come up with a verb phrase. So, and the instructors wanted to work on the passive or the active voice. So you can imagine that if you simply submit this to ChatGPT, you can find a wide range of different answers to that. All right. So to cut a long story short, what we found in the data is uncritical confidence in the answers provided through ChatGPT, lack of critical evaluation of the alternative answers, unsophisticated interactions with the tool, lack of engagement with the sources provided, and surprised to see the variety of responses offered by ChatGPT in the focus group when they discovered that every time you search ChatGPT, ChatGPT gives you different answers. So this is something that was not afforded by the tool itself, but was afforded only throughout interaction with language learners afterwards. Okay, so I'm about to finish. Okay, language learning ecologies. My point here is that the integration of corpus linguistics and AI may foster key educational gains, such as a shift from procedural to conceptual engagement with language, promoting critical thinking, strategic use of technology for solving language-related problems, the development of metacognitive skills through reflective interaction with data and AI output, and finally, the cultivation of interdisciplinary skills such as, for example, computational thinking. We propose this model we call critical AI literacy, CAIL, where we feel that we need to integrate 4 different legs of work with the students involving technical understanding, what a large language model does. I need to talk with Lawrence, see if we can use part of his presentation yesterday, which I think they will find very, very useful, right? So we think that this technical understanding may help bridge the gap between technological access and meaningful educational integration. As also mentioned Christopher Manning in one of his online talks, there are many challenges and risks to using large language models, so we need to be aware of those, and we need to make sure that we understand how large language models actually work. A second area of interest, thank you so much, is critical thinking, which we think in the context of language education, this means being able to assess whether an AI-generated bit of language reflects proper usage, of what kind of usage is that, what kind of tone, what kind of cultural nuance, and this is in the evidence that we found in our pilot study. We can really say that there is lack of criticality whenever coming closer to both corpus linguistics and AI, but at least corpus linguistics offers the evidence, and the evidence can be retrieved in a rather uncritical way, but the way evidence is retrieved from AI obviously is just not perfect in so many different ways. A third area is ethical awareness. We think that this is also another area of critical AI literacy that needs to be incorporated into language education. And finally, what we defined as practical applications is how we understand the use of AI in the context of work with students, for example, in our case, doing applied linguistics or language education, how this can be applied to different subjects and specific tasks that can inform their own study area. We have developed a taxonomy of practical applications and skills and cognitive skills involved. Moving forward, all right, we really need more research in this area if we really want to move from a procedural kind of scenario where we know how to use the tool towards a scenario where we really understand how the tool works and what the tool can offer, whether the tool is a sketch engine or the tool is ChatGPT, all right? So it's moving, from just knowing how to knowing that. I think reminds us that linguistic competence remains grounded in domain awareness, knowing both the how and the why of language in context rather than just language in the black box or language in somewhere in some server or even in your computer, all right? So through the type of skills that I mentioned earlier, I think we can contribute towards a hybrid but more inclusive pedagogy that benefits from what AI can offer in terms of flexibility. And of course, that includes, as I said earlier, more research into how language learners and language teachers obviously interact with these resources, all right? So given that AI-produced language diverges from authentic human usage, corpus-based pedagogies anchor AI in attested language data. Corpus linguistics, through data-driven learning approaches, complements AI, I think, by encouraging critical engagement if we design the pedagogy for critical engagement to emerge, with authentic language examples, which will, I think, enable learners to verify and contextualize AI outputs, avoiding, this passive acceptance of machine-generated content. Using real human corpus data can additionally help AI users reconsider how they engage with the outputs of ChatGPT and the like. Like Philip Sargent, I invite educators to reconsider the sense of language in an age where meaning is increasingly mediated by machines. And to approach AI not just as a tool, but maybe as a cultural challenge that can offer opportunities but needs to be understood. So the final invitation, I suppose, is to abandon binary thinking. And I follow suit here. I follow the suit of Mark Davies and Lawrence Anthony, so I'm not alone here, I think. And I think we can together reimagine our roles as co-designers, I suppose, of a new pedagogical ecosystem where learners, teachers, and AI collaborate around real corpus data, around shared inquiry, and a commitment to what it means to know. So thank you so much for your attention.